I'm very honoured that I was asked to speak today. So I hope what I share is of value to those of you who have joined. My name is Dairine Kennedy. I work at Google. I'm a mother of 2 kids. I think, Nicola, have you got my slides up there?
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah,
Perfect.
just
So I'm not a massive fan of slides, but I do like a visual. So I said I'd put this up for those of you who enjoy a picture as well. I'm not going to break into song and sing I'm Every Woman by Whitney Houston, but I do want to illustrate that there's a lot of elements that make us different and unique and special. And I'm dyslexic and I'm very proud of being dyslexic. And but it doesn't define all of who I am. There's a lot of elements to me as well, like there is everyone. So it is really just about feeling very empowered, I think, to be who you are and not to feel like there's a stereotype that goes with that. Probably my one big takeaway is to just really embrace your uniqueness and be yourself. So, I mean, I'm going to go through my journey with dyslexia, and I say, in life, my learnings along the way, and I look forward to hearing any questions you have at the end. But um, like touch on here, there's a lot of different facets to us all, but dyslexia definitely did have a role in shaping my life in a very positive way, I would say. And I think, it speaks to that kind of resilience when you've had to have challenges, how you overcome them and how you grow, is a really cool part, I think, of being dyslexic, that I really enjoy. So if you go to the next one,
yeah.
I say my early days, I didn't feel that way at all. I think, when I was, 5 or 6, and I was in school and I was definitely noticing that I, was finding learning harder than other kids. And, teachers, would brought it up to my parents, or I felt, kids were, mocking me. I just wanted to blend into the background. I did not want to be different, and I did not want to stand out, and I did not want to feel unique at all. So I very much was like this little guy, and I would do anything to not draw attention to the elements of dyslexia that were popping up at the time. Now, obviously, I didn't know I was dyslexic at the time, but gosh, I remember like just the fear you would have of having to write on the blackboard or do your spelling. So those early times where I really just wanted to disappear, and not have that focus on me at all. And I suppose that kind of brings me into the next piece, which is this is how I would have felt most of the time in school, where I just found it a really tough period. And it was just, it's not, any specific teacher's fault, but in primary school, when you feel like you're not doing well and it really impacts your confidence and you notice that you're behind a lot of your peers, um, it just wasn't, a nice experience at all. And I guess if you move to the next one there,
Yeah.
in reality, when I was going into first class, the teachers, I suppose, felt like I was, I suppose, slow, and not picking up information as I should, or not, being able to have good handwriting, or my spelling just wasn't improving. A lot of the time, they thought I wasn't trying hard enough. And, I think education's gone on leaps and bounds now. But when I was being taught at school, um, it was, punishment of, standing with your face in the corner for 30 minutes if you didn't get your spellings right. A lot of like standing up, in public, what felt like shaming of doing your spellings or reading in front of the room or writing in the blackboard, all things that, just gave me such anxiety, and it was really awful. And really dented your confidence at the best of times, right? You now felt massively under stress and pressure. to try and perform something that you find really difficult as it is. So that was not a pleasant learning environment. And then I was told to stay back, which felt very embarrassing. You're leaving behind all your friends and you're going, back into a class that was the junior class and you're the older one. But it was a testament to my parents because they were very good at moving me into a school that was better when they know that that wasn't working. So I moved schools in secondary, and they kind of quickly saw, okay, there's a problem here, and advised my parents to get me assessed, and I got diagnosed with dyslexia. And that was a really, there's talk about pivotal moments. That was definitely one of the great pivotal moments for me, which was to actually just understand, and have someone, a professional, say, you're smart, you're doing well on these other pieces that we've assessed, and these two pieces, your handwriting and your spelling, and a little bit reading, it's a struggle, but that doesn't mean that you're not intelligent. And I think as a kid, you kind of need to be told that all the time, because even if you're told that, you still don't feel it. And that's kind of something that you keep all through life, of that kind of imposter syndrome, or that insecurity of, like, am I good enough? Like deep down, like, will I get found out? And I think that's something that's taken a long time to try and squash out. But getting diagnosed in itself, weirdly enough, didn't change anything in schools. I don't think the school, even though it was good that they recognized straight away I had a learning disability, they didn't actually know what to do. So I'd have these things where I was taken out, and they'd just make me practice my handwriting or practice reading. And again, I don't want to speak for everyone. I'm sharing my own personal experience and my journey with dyslexia. Different people will have different experiences and have different skills. But for me, my handwriting was never going to get better. I was at a certain level, which looked, very similar to my son, who's 7. I'd say he's excelled me now. My handwriting just was never going to be better than it was. So consistently being made to practice just felt incredibly demotivating. I'd way prefer to have been allowed to try and learn more information, which I was really good at, remembering. So that stayed. And then I actually moved schools again. My parents, were like, okay, look, this, we'll move somewhere that's got to have a better fit. There's a support teacher here that actually will, help you. And that was a real game changer. Because at that point, I think, like a lot of people, if you're not able to keep up in class, you tend to be a bit disruptive. So I probably wasn't very good in school. Like, my behavior was probably a bit bold, and I was a bit of a messer because of that. Because a lot of the way that we were learning, and a lot of the way we were taught in school, was dictation, which was kind of a cruel joke for me, because, like, not only now am I having to do handwriting, so it's taking me a really long time to think about the spellings of what the teacher's dictating, and I can't keep up with the pace that she's saying the lesson on, but I now have to learn off my terrible writing, which I can't even read myself. So there was no chance. Like, I don't know how I even, passed my exams at all, to be honest. But when I did the mocks for the leaving, I was still doing the exams the normal way. And, I pretty much got D's and failed a few bits, and it didn't look likely. And nor did I care to go to college. I had no hopes and dreams for having any kind of an academic career. I mean, I couldn't wait for school to be over. And I loved my friends and I loved my school. But it was more the fact that, like, I didn't feel smart in school, and that's not a great feeling. But the turning point that, like, I'm always be eternally grateful for 2 amazing teachers that just really, when I moved there and they saw that, they were like, God, you actually really know this information, though. Like, what's happening in the exam? And I was like, it's too hard for me to write. By the time I think I've had, like, I'm basically doing an exam on handwriting for every subject. So it doesn't feel like I'm even doing the subjects. I just feel like I'm doing, you know, an English exam every time. And it's not letting me focus on the information I'm trying to get down the page. So, you know, the support teacher was like, but you know, you're diagnosed with dyslexia, like you can get all these accommodations. You know, you can have do your leaving cert by tape, which, you know, we'd never heard of. The leaving cert was now like two months out. And they were like, you can do your exams on tape. So I was like, okay, brilliant. I mean, like I know all the information. I can speak forever. So I mean, that was fantastic because, you know, I went from getting a D in business to getting an A1 and winning the business prize. You know, it was a real turnaround of like, wow, I actually could do okay at this leaving cert thing. Maybe I should try a little harder. So, you know, when it came to doing the college, you know, choices and everything, everyone had kind of not written me off, but quite nicely went, you know, you're very good at art. Why don't you just go to art college? And it was really great to have my dad's support, I guess, who had read this article about UCD Business School. And the timing, you know, when you look back in hindsight, the timing was really fantastic because they had decided to do for the first time like a digital online course where every student got their own laptop, and all the study was going to be done in this, you know, online way where everyone could access the information online, and you could submit everything via your digital work, which was fantastic for me, and again a game changer because, you know, I knew then that I could just kind of forget this handwriting thing and just focus on, you know, my best friend, which is spell check, and never really look back and worry about any of it again. So for school, it was a real turnaround. It, like, you know, it was the last 10 minutes, I guess, where my dad said, you know, put down commerce and UCD, like you never know. And then it was great, you know, the leaving cert went pretty well considering I had probably checked out for the majority of school, not thinking I was ever going to do well in exams, to going to do commerce, which was super. But just a slightly derail, which you'll see in this next slide here, which I would bring up for any parents on the call, of kids that are dyslexic, because one thing that really helped me during that period of time when I didn't feel confidence because of school, I always had like sport. I had, you know, I was into horse riding. And I think for any kids, you know, it's great to have that extracurricular thing that you can focus on if school's not working out for you. But horse riding, and there's many sports like it that can really help the kind of hand-eye coordination. I think with dyslexia, with the kind of left and right brain thinking, it was very good to be able to kind of work on that skill set in a way that it didn't feel like I was actually working on it at all. So, you know, it had its own challenges because I had to learn a lot of courses, and, you know, when you're jumping a lot of different fences, 30 fences, you have to learn a lot of these different things. And that was, I had to learn really try to learn those properly and learn dressage tests, which is kind of, you know, like learning off numerical order, which can be which I find difficult. So it was good for that. But it gave me a lot of confidence to know that if I could apply myself to something hard, that, you know, if I really worked at it, I could do well. And I ended up riding for Ireland in 4 European championships, and it just gave me a lot of confidence to then reapply. And it was around the same time as the leaving, when I got these accommodations, that I suddenly was like, you know, I had that then in the back of my head, that grit to know that, like, okay, if you really apply yourself now to this school thing, maybe it can work because you know that you can do it. Whereas before that, I think success breeds more success. So, you know, if you can give your kids those wins to make them feel good about themselves and make them feel confident, it does unlock a lot of other potential opportunities. So I would just say that, I'm not saying to go and buy them a pony, but I do think sport can give a lot of good confidence as well. So yeah, so you can go to the next one. Basically, the UCD college experience was absolutely brilliant. I moved away from the tape, which I found very difficult for the leaving, even though it was a lot easier than writing. If you can imagine doing your exams where you're recording yourself speak like we are today, but halfway through you're thinking, God, did I put in that date of like where Newgrange was? And you don't have time to record back and listen to it. So it ended up being quite difficult to keep track over a 2.5 hour period of like, did I get all the right information out? Whereas when I was in college, they said, you can have a scribe, you can have somebody who sits next to you and they just write everything you say. And that was fantastic, because I could see everything that was there and I could go back and add bits. And that was absolutely brilliant. And I do feel for my scribe, and she never stopped writing for 2.5 hours. I literally talked the legs off her. But it was brilliant. And I got a first in my BCom, and I got a lot of confidence again from that, knowing that, okay, I didn't get anything extra, like I had the same information as everyone else, because you do feel that when you're doing something like special as a kid, you don't really want people to think that like you didn't earn it like they did. And I definitely, was building blocks of confidence back up. I still wouldn't have ever said it to anybody. If I could get away with not telling anyone, I didn't. I was still very secretive about it. I didn't want people to think I was, stupid. I was afraid, like if they thought this about me, would they think less of me? Would they not want to be in my team or my group at college if they knew that I had a learning disability? So it was still very much something that I kept to myself. And then I took 2 years off to ride horses and bring on horses and do that, because I thought that might be what I'd like to do for a living. And then I actually kind of missed the academic side of things and the business world. And I went back to Smurfit Business School and did a master's there. And again, really good experience. But like with anything, when you're, when you kind of have this thing that you're a bit secretive about and you're a bit nervous about, it was always a bit hanging over me of like, well, I had to, write something, and we didn't have formalized exams in there. And I was like, oh, and then I didn't do well, and I kind of forgot to tell him and my lecturer. So there's a bit of that where, and I'll get to that later, but really I can't say enough how important it is to just like, wear what's going on with a badge of honor, don't apologize for it, tell people how you can be successful, because most people in education want to make you be successful. And if you don't tell them what's going on, they can't help you. Or they'll just make assumptions that aren't true, right? Like you're lazy or you're not trying or whatever. So that was all great, and Smurfit went really well, and I ended up, being top of my class and winning the President's Award there. So I applied to Google, and again, I did not disclose in my interview that I was dyslexic, and I got someone to double check my CV to make sure I didn't make any spelling mistakes on it. And even though I know now, and I knew then, that Google is fantastically inclusive and supportive company around neurodiversity and any disabilities, I still just didn't have the confidence to take the risk that there might be somebody that was on the interview panel that didn't feel the same. I didn't want to take that risk, and I wasn't confident enough in my own interviewing ability, I guess, that I would get it, even if I had that thing that potentially could go against me. So I didn't say it. And then I went and I got a sales job, and I loved it, and it was brilliant, and I could talk the sell sand, as they say, and I would be it was a tough job. You'd targets every quarter and you had to hit them, but it was really tangible, and I loved that. But it's still little things were starting to rear their head from before. You'd have a lot of strategy sessions where someone would go, Dairine, that's a great idea. Can you whiteboard it for us? And I'd go, I'd actually prefer not to whiteboard it for you. I'd like you to, imagine what I'm saying. I could get out of, I'd become an expert at hiding it. And then, I had a really, really good manager. And this is, one of the top tips I'd say as well is like, try and surround yourself with really good allies that are going to help and support you. But I had this really great manager, Sandra Whitney, and we had a really good relationship. So we had a lot of trust and a lot of, and I knew, she was invested in me. So she said, listen, like, you're doing really well, and, you're really good at your sales job. She's like, but I've noticed when you're sending emails, like, like you're making kind of sloppy mistakes, like, can you have a little better attention to detail there? And, just maybe read them once before you send them to like 1,000 people. And I just was like, you know what, I probably should just come clean here. And I said to her, like, look, I'm dyslexic and I have been for years. And when I said it out loud, it felt absolutely crazy that I'd gone through Google for 2 years and I hadn't said, well, I actually did my exams with the scribe, and I'm this other person. And she was like, why didn't you ever say anything? And I was like, I just didn't want people to judge me for it. I didn't want people to think less of me. And obviously she was like, don't be ridiculous. I think it's great. But she's like, I would encourage you to really share this with people you work with so that they don't presume and assume that you don't have good attention to detail because you're making, spelling mistakes or grammatical errors, which I do a lot. Or I'm struggling to read big strat docs. I'm way prefer more visual learning. Or I'm very, I learn a lot around, let's say, the product. We'd have to do a lot of product trainings. I'm a lot better at learning practically. Like, let's get into that interface and show me how it works rather than reading it on slides. So that was a massive turning point then, I guess, in my work career, because I just shared it with my team, and I got some really people go, oh my God, thank God, I actually understand what's going on, because I went on to manage people, a team of I think it's like 30 now, but it was 10, and we have a thing called ping, which is chat here, and people would you chat back and forth to people all the time, and I love it because it's really instant and I'm really impatient, so it was fantastic. But my spelling was terrible, and I would always forget the don't, or I don't like that. I'd say like, oh, I like that, but I'd mean I don't like that, which is very confusing for people. Or I'd say like, I'm running to a meeting, but I'd say like I run to a meeting. So little things like that, and people would be like, so it turns out my whole team were talking like, we can't understand Dairine on thing. Like, I'm absolutely lost. I don't know what you want. And is she cross? Like, is she being cross with me because she's being really short? So it was actually fantastic relief for everybody when I told them, like, well, I'm actually dyslexic and I'm going to be making, like, I love ping. I'm not going to stop using it. But they definitely learned, as they say, to read Dairine as a language of its own after a while. And that was just a great confidence boost of like, look, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being dyslexic, and it really helps people understand what accommodations you need if you're upfront about it, especially if you're in a very supportive, inclusive, understanding workplace. So I suppose you have to, I'd encourage everyone to try and be in one of those. But I think the nicer part for me was, as everyone, I think, became more aware and started learning more about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and more around neurodiversity, I started like really becoming a lot more proud and understanding that I actually had some serious strengths that were specific to being dyslexic as well. So, kind of that innovative side that I have, entrepreneurial side, ideas, I'm, problem solver, practical problem solver. A lot of that I think is quite unique to my dyslexia as well. And it's definitely traits, if you look up around, people who are dyslexic, like Richard Branson, etc. Like, there is that common thread of entrepreneurial spirit. And maybe that's down to kind of the tenacity or the resilience that you kind of have at a young age, or how you need to be kind of, you get quite ingenious when you're younger to get around your different homework tasks. Maybe that makes you brainstorm earlier in life. But so that was kind of my Google side of work, if you want to just click on. So I mean, I've worked there for 12 years. I started in sales, then I'm in scaled sales. Now I manage a function of teams that do scale support, scale selling, scaled acquisition, and publisher intelligence, and working a lot with people. But what I think is really nice is that when I'm sharing about things to my team and you're giving that vulnerability, I guess, I think it really helps the people that you manage to be also then sharing and be able to feel that they can tell you what's going on with them. So I think, we shouldn't shy away from having that vulnerability, right? And telling people what you need to be successful in life, not just if you have dyslexia, but just in life. There are things that you're going to learn about yourselves as adults or as children, of like how you learn. And our education system at the moment, it's very rigid on how it teaches and how kids learn, and it's getting better. And really, for me, I can't get over how important a role teachers play, because if it hadn't been for some of those fantastic teachers I had that really, my business teacher stayed and gave me, when I realized I could do it by tape, and I realized I actually had a lot of information, just to get that extra mile. He gave me grinds for free and just invested a lot of his time. And the support teacher I had, who, really just listened and gave me that kind of emotional support that you need when you're younger and you feel inadequate, and it's hard to want to put yourself out there in front of your peers and be different, and you need a lot of support. So I think like teachers play such a pivotal role in your success, that it's kind of scary to think like, without that one teacher deciding to invest in me, like I just wouldn't have gone to college and I'd never have worked at Google. Like, and what a shame that would have been for me to not know that I had potential to do more. So I have here two other things that are very close to my heart, which is I started a business with my sister 9 years ago, which is kind of I suppose the artistic side, but around designing scarves and pajamas. And feel free to go on and buy something. It's kdk.ie. But that was a really great experience to be able to kind of flex that entrepreneurial muscle, I guess, and start something from scratch and have it be small and build it. And we ended up selling in Brown Thomas and Avoca and online. And it's a really, really fun thing that I'm proud of doing with my sister Kira, who is running it now. And it's really successful, which is exciting to see for an Irish luxury brand. And then Neurodiversity Ireland is something I suppose I'm putting a lot of focus and effort on right now, which is this. It started small. It was started as Neurodiversity Sandymount. There's a group of parents of neurodivergent kids. So for those of you who aren't familiar with neurodiversity, it's around celebrating a different mindset, around that, brain differences, aren't deficits that need to be fixed, but they are a really great way of thinking differently and should be celebrated. And with that comes, there's challenges where if you are ADHD, dyslexic, dyspraxic, or autistic, like, there are really basic accommodations that people can make and be kind. I mean, you need both. That'll make your life, again, a pivotal change being a teacher, make your life fantastic or miserable. And we're just really trying to drive that awareness, because I think when people have awareness on how they can help you be successful, most really nice people will want you to be successful. So what we're doing at the moment is doing like stories into the primary schools, so the kids understand, that they need to support people if they are learning differently, acting differently, and that there's absolutely nothing wrong with learning or behaving differently. And I think for kids in general, that's a really positive message, because everyone's going to come across something where they feel, a bit different or embarrassed, or they're having a challenge. And I think the more we can build in young that actually, being unique is fantastic. Like, why would you want to be the exact same as everyone else when you can be really special and really fantastic and unique in your own self? So we're doing a lot of work with schools, and we're doing a lot of work within our Sandymount community. We want to be a flagship of being the most inclusive community to neurodivergent, kids and adults. So we have a lanyard that you can wear, or you can go into a shop and skip a queue. We have our parking space outside Tesco, where if you have a child like autistic or ADHD that would struggle walking a long distance, and it could become a bit of a flight safety risk, that you can have this car space and it'll be saved for you. And if you have a car sticker, you can use it, which was great to secure. And then we have sensory bags going into all the businesses, so that when kids go in, they can, have little things that make their life easier and funner while you're trying to eat your dinner and have a nice family night out. And then, with Dyslexia Awareness is coming up in October, so we're going to do a story into the schools in our D4 area to really just like allow it to be an easier, non-taboo topic for kids to be able to wear with a badge of honor and say, well, actually, I've dyslexia, and that's going to make me probably a really great entrepreneur one day. And, I'm delighted about it. And yeah, maybe my handwriting isn't as good as yours, but, I don't need it. Like, I can just have a laptop and it'll be fine. So I think it's about really trying to help, I think, not have kids go through the kind of educational challenges, I guess, I had at the beginning. We really want to try and make the narrative a lot more positive, so people don't feel like they have anything, but they are dyslexic, and they are entrepreneurs, and they are smart, and that's just another facet that makes them really special and really great, and they need to just own it and be happy and proud of themselves. So that's a really kind of I suppose project I'm very passionate about, and the parents that are on our committee and our board are very passionate about how we can really support neurodivergent children and adults thrive in the world. A big part of that is just making the community around them be supportive and understand, so that they can be kinder, and also giving access to things that help, right? So those special teachers, they're really important. And I don't know if anyone saw, but a lot of schools got their special teachers cut. So I mean, that's really detrimental, because if it hadn't been for that special teacher that I had, teaching me how to learn better with mind maps, etc., or telling me that there was accommodations available, it would have been really detrimental. So it's kind of really trying to keep driving the awareness of like the importance of education, the importance of teachers understanding and spotting if someone looks like they're dyslexic, that there's like all these really great supports that we can put in place. Like, let's not hide them. Every teacher should be, really well versed in any kind of learning disabilities. And in reality, it's only if they have a real interest that they can get properly taught about it. So I think that's something that we're definitely want to work with the educational providers on, to improve that as well. So I'll go in summary to my kind of tips, I guess, which is I think my biggest, I suppose, motto is just be yourself, and we should all be letting people be themselves and not trying to change them, and not trying to fit them into stereotypes. And even as a dyslexic person, when I'm looking up what that means, I don't resonate with everything. I'm not really disorganized, right? So I kind of read that and I go, oh, I'm not actually. So thank you very much. Or I definitely resonate with elements of it, but everyone's different. So everyone's experience and journey will be different. So these are just tips and they may or may not work for you or your kids. So you're going to have to be flexible, right? We need to be more flexible in life. People don't fit into a box anymore, and we don't want them to. But the top tips I would say is like, surround yourself with allies. The more allies, mentors I got through work and friendship, the easier it all became. And that meant not being secretive. I needed to be able to share, right? Like, if you're not sharing what's going on, it's very hard for people to support you. So, I have friends in work, other managers, where I'd go like, look, is there any way you could give that document a read? Because like, I will read something 100 times and I will read it how I meant to write it. So if I read it out loud, I would read it correctly. But when I'm writing it and I'm proofreading it, I will read it how I meant to write it. So unless I've taken an hour break and come back, then maybe I'll be able to spot it. But if not, I need someone still to proofread. And they're very small things. Like for my master's, I just hired somebody to proofread my thesis. And it was quite long, so I feel sorry for her. But it was very helpful because there are times where, I'm going to still have to write long documents at work, and I'm good at them. So I think that's the piece that I think can be confusing for people. Like I can write like a nicely put together document. It's just I'm going to have grammatical spelling errors. So you need someone who's going to be able to spot that for you. And I definitely have some good friends that I can lean on for that. I definitely would advise everyone, if you're in a good working environment, that you feel safe and you can be your true self in, which I hope everyone is. Tell the people around you what you need to be successful, because they will want you to be successful, right? You're their employee, so they want to get the most out of you. And they won't get the most out of you if you don't feel like you can be yourself, and if you're nervous or anxious about being caught out, found out, embarrassed. So I just said straight up, like, look, if I take notes in a meeting, I'm not going to be able to listen or participate in the meeting properly. I'll have to focus way too much on taking the notes correctly and spelling them right and stopping to spell check something. And it's not effective for me. And my management, absolutely, I want you to participate. So we will never ask you to take notes. It's the small things. And sometimes I actually kind of like whiteboarding now. I just didn't want people to not understand why my handwriting looked like a 7-year-old. Whereas now I don't care as much. And I think maybe the older you get, or maybe when you have little bits of successful things happen, you're going to go, I don't actually care if people think my handwriting's bad. And it becomes quite liberating to be like, oh, well, but I would quite like to write it because it'll help me think out loud. So I'm going to do it, and you're going to get over it if I don't spell it right. And obviously no one actually cares either. You start to realize that as well. And then the last thing I would say is, and I mean, I'm very grateful for Google and for having a fantastic employer that's always given me tons of support and champions a huge amount of neurodiversity friendliness and diversity, equity, and inclusion within its everyday. That it made me feel really confident and proud of being dyslexic and knowing all the good things that it brings, as well as things that I need accommodations in. So I definitely, wear dyslexia as a badge of honor now, and will tell it to anyone who ever wants to know. So that is something that I'd love to bring into our community more, because it's really just around people telling you every day, like, a lot of people that are dyslexic tend to be highly intelligent. Like when you're a kid, you love hearing that kind of thing. So I think it's around just really championing that if this is not a negative thing, this is a really interesting, unique part of you that makes you extra brilliant. And people should feel that and wear it like a badge of honor, I think. So yeah, so that's kind of it from me.